Well, most of the American population has got too many carbohydrates, too much chronic stress, too many seed oils or processed oils, too many things that really have their cells predisposed to glucose metabolism. They're not aerobically fit. The people aren't aerobically fit. That's another big one, having cardiovascular fitness. And so if your cells are predisposed to burning glucose, you're really kind of asking viruses to come on in and have a replication orgy. Whereas if they're in deep beta oxidation, it's not exactly a very good environment, right?
Yeah, well, what I like to tell people is sugar makes your white cells lazy. They just don't work as well when the sugar load is high. And for our type 2 diabetics, their sugar load's high all the time. Their blood sugar's high and their white cells are lazy and they get an infection. They can't fight it off. It's devastating. And yet they also are more prone to infect. Well, I guess if you can't fight it off, you feel like you're prone to them. But, and here's the other thing that more research needs to be done on. Most cancer cells have to have sugar. That's how they grow. And if they're deprived of sugar, the vast majority of cancer cell types can't grow. And there's some research supporting this out of UCLA on ovarian cancer. I have a friend whose nephew just had a recurrence of some weird cancer. And the doctors looked at the parents and said, he starts a ketogenic diet today. That was before they even restarted his treatment. So
these doctors are a little bit forward thinking and are up on the latest.
Yeah. Can you imagine being told your kid's cancer's come back? You're going ketogenic today. I mean, that'd be scary. But so our immune system doesn't tolerate the high levels of glucose floating around in most people's systems right now. And I think the thing that scares me the most is when they start talking about 50 to 80% of adults in the next decade are going to have obesity and type 2 diabetes. I'm sorry, we can't afford that. We could divert every dollar we have, but the amount of disability, blindness, kidney disease, dialysis, cardiovascular disease, lost years of work, lost years of life. Of course, they get inexpensive at that point, but up until then, we don't have those kind of funds. We'd have to divert everything. We'd have to give up on education, defense, and everything else we do, because I think that's too high a budget item.
I think
it's all preventable.
I think the current statistic is that $1 in $4 in healthcare right now is diabetes related.
Well, and that's only going to rise.
Right.
Unless we can get people to turn this around. It's a disease you can put in remission for most people. My sister gets really upset with me when the first thing I notice is somebody's weight. But when I look at a young mother pushing her kid in the stroller who's got a bottle of juice in the stroller, that's when we get on to kids.
Oh, the infamous.
And I look at how heavy she is, and she's got a couple little kids, and I think, sweetheart, in my head, sweetheart, you're not going to live long enough to see your children. I mean, it just breaks my heart. And yet that's the reality. Or she'll be so debilitated by type 2 diabetes that she won't be able to enjoy her grandchildren. And it's because it's not what you look like, it's what's happening to your cells. You're glucose intolerant, your pancreas is wearing out early, your vessels are clogging up, you've got inflammation everywhere. And that's, I mean, what I see is the heavy mommy. What I'm thinking is, oh my gosh, what's going on inside your body is just terrifying because you're young. Yeah. And your kids are little. And I see it all the time. It's everywhere. And it just breaks my heart.
If you're eating a high carb, low fat meal, it's a recipe for disaster.
Well, there's only so many places all that starch and sugar can go, and you run out of places real fast.
Well, yeah, but you're also not triggering that gallbladder response that when you fast and then you break your fast with a fat and protein rich meal, that's what causes that really good bile response from your gallbladder to keep your bile ducts clean.
Well, and now we're back to the snacking thing.
Yes. Yep.
You've got to pause between meals for several hours for a whole bunch of reasons. And one of them is the gallbladder. It's certainly not the only reason.
Exactly. The gallbladder and the hormones between your gallbladder, your ghrelin, your leptin, and your insulin. It's a nasty dance.
But then if you give up snacking, it happens automatically.
Absolutely. Everything goes in. In the 80s, when they came up with the food pyramid and told us to eat carbs and low fat, that triggered these massive sugar spikes in the meals, right? Like, which you're aware of because you were doing it. But instead of saying, oh, this didn't quite work and we need to completely rethink it, what they said was, okay, eat 5 or 6 small meals. So
right.
You didn't get quite the spikes, but you still got the sugar load, but then you got the
still never were satiated. You're always hungry.
Right.
You're just always hungry.
But you also exacerbated the hormonal balance at the same time.
I don't know how to scare them without sounding obnoxious, because like I said, it just breaks my heart to see young parents walking around with an extra 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds and knowing what their future holds and how it's going to impact their family. And then they're teaching their children bad eating habits on top of everything else. I mean, it's a generational thing. But until somebody decides they're going to change the family tree within a family, I don't know. I get discouraged.
You know, we're trying to empower people. Like, humans got here because we did things on our own and we were able to figure it out just given the right inputs, right?
Yeah, but when the information coming out from the powers that be is either misleading or flat out incorrect, it's very, very hard to fight that. Yeah.
But I think that you know, like I said, we have a point right now where data that clearly shows that metabolic health is at the root of all this, and this is something we can all take into our own hands and work on. Like you said, you have a friend who had type 2 diabetes and she was able to get off the insulin. Well, you know, most people can do that, right?
Well, it's a disease that in the vast majority of people could be put into remission.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say everybody, but there's no reason to think that our pancreases were meant to give out before the rest of us gives out. I mean, we just are wearing them out.
Yeah.